5 billion of the 280 billion that they want to confiscate or they have frozen of the Russian assets are in the United States. They want to use those $5 billion in dollars to provide weapons to the Ukrainians against the country they are fighting. Now, I see a problem with this. Look, I'm an American patriot. I grew up in this country, and as I mentioned, the least likely character to have ever achieved the success I thank God every day for this country.
Is the US dollar's reign as the world reserve currency coming to an end? In his latest video, Andy Schectman dives deep into this looming financial shift. He uncovers the historical roots of the dollar's dominance, the recent policies shaking its foundation, and the global moves threatening its future. Join us as we explore Schectman's eye-opening analysis and discover what this could mean for the global economy. So, don't miss a single moment of this video. Now, let's listen to Andy Schectman.
My view of the markets right now, in essence, is that we are really kind of at a crossroads. We're near a Rubicon. And I guess we can start by, since you brought up oil, to me, that's really the linchpin of everything that's happening. I ask people often, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? And very few people know the answer to that question. And, right after World War II, we signed an agreement called the Bretton Woods Agreement, where we became the world reserve currency, taking over for the pound sterling. And at the time, the promise was to other governments, hey, we will honor a fixed rate of gold at $35 an ounce. So you take our dollars, and anytime you want to exchange them into gold, it'll be at $35 an ounce, fixed. And it was that way until 1971, when President de Gaulle from France largely realized that we were printing more dollars than we had gold backing it in Fort Knox, the Treasury, and he sent warships over to New York Harbor filled with dollars, saying, "Give us our dollars. You're creating more money to fund the Vietnam War. We want our gold." And we did. We gave him largely what he wanted, and at that point, Nixon closed the gold window, because within a matter of weeks or less, all of the gold would have been gone. So he went back on our promise. The dollar was backed by nothing at that point. When it was a few years later in 1973 or 1974, rather, that in fact, it will be 50 years in a few days, 5 days, I believe it's 50 years, that we signed, 50 years ago, we signed the Petro Agreement, Kissinger did, with the Saudis. And the agreement was, we will protect you, and for that protection, you and OPEC will value oil in dollars globally, and the proceeds or any excess will go into U.S. treasuries, recycle your excess into treasuries. And it's been that way for 50 years. And it has created a synthetic demand for the dollar where every single country in the world has had to stockpile dollars. And I think that trend is nearing an end. And the ramifications of this, I believe, is being vastly underestimated by the public, by the elite, by the economists, by everybody. And a lot of things have happened over the last couple of years that is pushing this trend, accelerating it to the point where I think we are very, very close to ultimately losing the petro status. You could argue we've already lost our hegemony. We have not lost our supremacy, but we have lost our hegemony. And when you realize that the one thing that makes the dollar really is our relationship with Saudi Arabia, probably the dumbest thing that you could do would be to sign an executive order to go green. And that is exactly what Biden did when he came into office. He signed an executive order to go green, but I think it's also relevant to note that the lead economic advisor for the United States government is a bonehead named Jared Bernstein. And a lot of people have seen his interview on Twitter recently, where he was trying to explain how the U.S. sells bonds and uses the proceeds to fund its debt. And he couldn't even get 3 words out of his mouth. That was really embarrassing. But this is a man whose main thesis is to lose the dollar's reserve status, that he's written reports on it called Dethrone King Dollar, picked up in the New York Times. When Trump slapped tariffs on China, he said, great, we'll lose our reserve status now, hopefully. That was picked up in the Washington Post. He's the lead economic advisor to the U.S. government. So if indeed you do want to lose the petro status because it creates distortions and economic imbalances, as he claims, the first thing you would do would be to say to the Saudis, hey guys, thanks for the memories. It's been great. So much so that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia recently came out and said China was our most important trading partner in 2023 and will be for the next 50 years. Those numbers were chosen, or those words were chosen very specifically. In 5 days, it marks the 50-year anniversary of our petrodollar status. But we're going green, right? Well, to make that worse, let's weaponize the dollar. Let's tell Russia that we don't like what you're doing, and we're the world reserve currency. Now, one would argue, I would, that as the world reserve currency, it is not your prerogative to say who can and can't use it. And the world looks at us these days as being very hypocritical. I'll give you an example. Janet Yellen says to CNBC recently, you know, and I'm directing this at China, basically, is what she was saying, that if you know, Beijing, we're okay with you being friends with Russia. Well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. That's benevolent of you. You know, even though that you're partners in the BRICS, we're okay with you being friends. But if you give one penny to the Russian war machine, we will sanction your banks, your companies, and even Beijing itself. Never mind the fact that we've given $200 billion to the Ukraine without any congressional oversight. We're the world reserve currency. We can do that. Or we invaded Iraq 20 years ago, and supposedly under the guise of weapons of mass destruction. Oops, sorry, didn't find them, but we're still here. And in fact, we're going to topple your regime, put in a new government. But guess what? We're still here, and we're sanctioning 14 of your banks for having the audacity of trying to buy liquid natural gas from Iran and going through their banks. So 14 of the Iraqi banks are sanctioned, and they made $90 billion in oil revenue in 2023. The Iraqis did, and yet they're not even allowed to control their natural resource proceeds. It's held at the New York Fed, and towards the end of the year, they said to the U.S., "Can we please have $1 billion of our $90 billion that we made?" No, it's not a good time, we said. So what did Iraq do? They're in the process of kicking Western coalition forces out of the country right now. They've made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business and trade in dollars, you will wind up in prison and they will take your company. As of January 1st, 6 months ago, all green bills of any denomination, dollars, have been taken out of the banks. There are no more bills in there, and they have formally applied to the BRICS. So you see, my point I'm trying to make is that a lot of the Southern Hemisphere views us as being wholly hypocritical. And it's one thing to sanction and freeze assets. It's a whole nother thing to confiscate those assets. $5 billion of the $280 billion that they want to confiscate, or they have frozen, the Russian assets are in the United States. They want to use those $5 billion in dollars to provide weapons to the Ukraine. The other $280 billion that's being floated around that will take the interest of those frozen treasuries, about $4 or $5 billion a year, and use those to rebuild the Ukraine and provide weapons against the country they are fighting. Now, I see a problem with this. Look, I'm an American patriot. I grew up in this country, and as I mentioned, the least likely character to have ever achieved the success. I thank God every day for this country and the opportunities it gave me. But the leaders of this country are doing some very dumb things, and in particular, signing an executive order to go green, undermining the hegemony of the dollar, weaponizing the dollar. And all of this really came to a head before all of this started, when we left Afghanistan in a way that was very much un-American, leaving, 3,000 American people behind enemy lines, and turning our back on the interpreters and the freedom fighters who we gave them a promise, we'll give you visas on the way out, and we didn't. This was not lost on the rest of the world, because 2 days after that happened, Saudi Arabia signed a military protection agreement with Russia. Now, keep in mind, we've been protecting them for 50 years, and that's what's given us the dollar hegemony. They decided to do it with Russia. What else has Saudi Arabia done? Well, they have formally applied to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional and military and financial organization on the planet. They've formally applied and have been admitted into the BRICS. They've told people in Davos that we're open to taking other currencies for oil. You can see things are breaking away from all of this. And look, if it were just the mismanagement of the dollar globally, I think we'd be okay. Let's bring it home for a minute. And all of this comes into your question, because it's important to look at this from a whole perspective, right? I think the markets are manipulated. There are no free markets. There's just manipulations right now, but this will end badly, and I'll tell you why. So it took 200 years to create our first $1 trillion, we're doing it every 100 days.
Thank you for joining us as we delved into Andy Schectman's eye-opening analysis of the potential downfall of the US dollar. Understanding these global economic shifts is crucial for your financial future. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into economic trends and market insights. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep questioning the status quo.